If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You're listening to Scene of the Crime, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Citizen Detective, and Campus Killings. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Morford, one of the producers of Scene of the Crime, and welcome to this special update episode of the Delphi case from Season 1. While we're busy looking for the next case to bring you over a full season, and plan to present a new case in 2023, that doesn't mean we've forgotten the cases we've already brought to you on this podcast. In this episode, my co-producer Jess Betancourt will present an important update to our Season 1 case, the February 2017 murders of Liberty German and Abigail Williams in Delphi, Indiana. Our hope when we covered Libby's and Abby's case in Season 1 was that a resolution would soon follow, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. But we think authorities are finally getting close. We've avoided past Delphi updates that would have been based only on rumors and innuendos, but now we feel that this update is warranted, so here it is. After Jess walks you through the latest developments on Abby's and Libby's case, my other co-producer, Gray Hughes, will join me for discussion on what these developments may mean to the case. So enjoy this episode and be sure to stay subscribed to Scene of the Crime to ensure you get future updates on the cases we've covered, as well as announcements for new seasons of Scene of the Crime.
I'm Jess Betancourt, one of the co-producers and the writer of Scene of the Crime podcast. We wanted to bring you an update on the Delphi murder investigation. In this update, we assume that you listened to our 7-part series on the February 13th, 2017 slayings. That was Scene of the Crime Season 1. If you haven't, please go back and listen to those first. In the years since our series wrapped up, a number of unrelated arrests were made that sparked hopes that Delphi would be solved. For example, 42-year-old James Brian Chadwell II was arrested just 15 miles from Delphi after the multiple felons sexually assaulted a 9-year-old girl and chained her in his Lafayette basement. Although the public was hopeful that the killer of Abby and Libby had finally been caught, police do not seem to believe that Chadwell was connected to their case. But now there is new information unrelated to Chadwell that sheds light on the Delphi mystery, and it seems authorities may be getting closer to answers in this case. In May 2022, a search warrant that had been executed 5 years earlier became public. This search warrant affidavit, written by FBI Special Agent Nicole Robertson and signed by Judge Benjamin Diener of the Carroll County Circuit Court, was for the property of Ron Logan. Listeners will recall that Abby and Libby were found murdered on private property owned by 77-year-old Logan, a Delphi resident whose property was very near the Monon High Bridge. In fact, Abby and Libby's bodies were located just a fifth of a mile from his residence. A search warrant was executed by the FBI on Logan's property on March 17, 2017, approximately 1 month after Abby and Libby were killed. The affidavit in support of the warrant specifies that the following things are true. Investigators believe that the man on the bridge captured in Libby's video at 2:13 p.m. is indeed the killer of the girls. The video, filmed on Libby's phone that captured the infamous down-the-hill language, is 43 seconds long in its entirety. Quote, "A large amount of blood was lost by the victims at the crime scene. Because of the nature of the wounds, it is nearly certain that the perpetrator of this crime would have blood on his person/clothing." End quote. Investigators suspect the killer may have taken a souvenir from the scene of the crime, as at least one unspecified item of clothing was missing from one of the girls. The remainder of their clothing was located. Quote, "It appeared the girls' bodies were moved and staged," end quote. There were no signs of a struggle or physical altercation on the girls' persons. Investigators also recovered unknown fibers and unidentified hairs at the crime scene. Investigators sought to search Logan's property for evidence of anything having to do with the slayings, including forensic evidence, hair, bodily fluids, guns and cutting instruments, as well as electronic devices and storage media. Investigators believed that Ron Logan's build was consistent with that of the man in the video and that his voice was, quote, "not inconsistent with the man's voice." A woman who had had an intimate relationship with Ron Logan in the past reported that he had violent tendencies. He was physically abusive, he stalked and harassed her, and dragged her out of her car by the hair. He told her that he could kill her and no one would find her body. A woman whose name is redacted in the affidavit but may be the same ex-girlfriend told the investigators that Logan carried a gun everywhere he went, and he carried it in a fanny pack. Another female who had an intimate relationship with Logan told investigators that she was afraid of him, as he had punched her in the face for being disrespectful. This woman told a friend that if she ended up dead, Logan did it. Logan owned numerous guns and knives. There are questions about Logan's alibi on the day of the murders, February 13th. He contacted a male cousin on the morning of the 14th, before the murders were discovered, and asked that relative to lie about Logan's whereabouts on the afternoon of the 13th. Logan asked the cousin to say that he picked Logan up between 2 and 2:30 p.m. to go to Aquarium World in Lafayette, about 30 minutes away. However, a receipt from the pet store found in Logan's home is time-stamped 5:21 p.m. on the 13th. He could have left his Delphi home as late as about 4:45 p.m. to secure that receipt at 5:21. As we reported in our series, investigators believe the girls were deceased by 3:30 p.m. The warrant indicates that investigators believe Logan made, quote, "statements that were found to be factually false and intentionally designed to deceive law enforcement about his alibi." The cousin initially told police that he had driven Logan to Lafayette around 2:30, but in a subsequent interview, he admitted it was a lie made at Logan's request. Cell phone tower data showed Logan's cell phone was in Delphi in the area near the Monon High Bridge Trail on the afternoon of February 13th. A text message sent from his phone at 7:56 p.m. on February 13th indicated the phone was, quote, "likely outside of his residence and in the proximity of the murder scene," end quote. Finally, 15 tips called into police specifically named Ron Logan as a potential suspect. So although this search warrant has newly been made public, the search itself was actually conducted 5 years ago. If anything of evidentiary value was found pointing to Ron Logan as the suspect, investigators did not act on it that we know of. Ron Logan is now deceased. He was never arrested or named a suspect for the murders. Now there's a new person of interest. After the murders, investigators forensically analyzing Libby's phone, the one with which she captured the 43-second video of the suspected killer walking swiftly toward her across the Monon High Bridge, they discovered that starting in 2016, she had been communicating regularly with an online persona named Anthony Schatz. 3 years later, in August of 2020, the man behind the Anthony Schatz account was arrested. None of this information was released until December 6, 2021, when Indiana investigators announced via a press release that they were seeking information about a fake social media account using the handle Anthony Schatz. They declined to specify what the connection was, if any, to the Delphi case, but now we know, thanks to a podcast called The Murder Sheet, which obtained documents relating to the case, that, unbeknownst to her family, Libby was completely enthralled with someone she thought was a cute older boy who had accounts on both Instagram and Snapchat since July of 2016. This Anthony Schatz posted photos of himself showing a very attractive and wealthy young man. But he wasn't a cute older boy. He didn't actually exist. The fake account used images of a male model without his permission to lure young girls to communicate with the man behind the account, a man named Kegan Kline. On February 25, 2017, 12 days after the murders, police served a search warrant on Kline's home on Canal Street in Peru, Indiana. 6 of Kline's electronic devices were seized at that time, but he wasn't arrested until 3 years later. In an interview on the 25th with Indiana State Police Sergeant Kunstek and FBI Special Agent Willman, Kline admitted that he was behind the Schatz account. 2020 charging documents alleged that the purchase of the fake Schatz accounts was to, quote, solicit nude images, obtain their addresses, and attempt to meet them, end quote. According to legal documents, through the Catfish account, Kline obtained over 100 sexually explicit images and 20 videos from about 15 teenage girls, including sexual images of children between 12 and 17, adults involved in sexual acts with children between the ages of 13 and 11, and images of drugs and of Kline with a handgun, all of this according to WTHR. Upon his arrest, Kline was charged with approximately 30 different crimes, including possession of child sex abuse material, child solicitation, child exploitation, synthetic identity deception, and obstruction of justice. He has pleaded not guilty. When police arrested Kline, they questioned him about communications between the Schatz account, created and maintained by him, and Libby. Forensic examinations of his computer showed that Kline was logged into the Schatz account on the day the girls were killed. Kline admitted to investigators that he had been communicating with Libby on the night before the murders when she was at a sleepover. Based on the transcript of the police interview with Kline obtained by the murder sheet and subsequently the media, Kline communicated with Libby for a few hours while she was at the sleepover and then blocked her because she was, quote, annoying. However, he denied setting up any kind of meeting with her. He said, quote, see, I don't remember ever saying to meet up with me, though. Whether the police have any evidence that he did so remains unknown. Kline has also repeatedly denied having anything to do with the slayings. He said in his police interview it was a, quote, coincidence that I happened to talk to her. Furthermore, he said, quote, I don't remember talking to her really. I didn't even know who she really was until after I saw that on the news. But police have said that after the murders, Kline said to another online contact, quote, OMG, what happened? Yeah, we were supposed to meet up, but she never showed up, end quote. To date, Kegan Kline has not been charged with any crimes relating to the Delphi murders. But there is some indication that his communications with Libby on the day she died are not a mere coincidence. This is all taken from reporting by WTHR. Kline's Samsung Galaxy phone was factory reset on February 23, 2017, 10 days after the Delphi murders, and before he knew police planned to search his home. However, investigators were able to obtain information off the phone, including discussions about Kline meeting people in Las Vegas and prostitution. On February 27th, 2 days after the search warrant was executed at his home, Kline contacted police claiming he had located his iPhone 5, something they had been seeking. On the phone, investigators found images of girls of indeterminate ages posing nude. They also found much of the data from Kline's Facebook, Instagram, MeetMe, Snapchat, and Twitter accounts had been deleted. A review of the phone found that hours after police left his home on February 25th, Kline had uninstalled and deleted Snapchat and Instagram, essentially getting rid of the Schatz accounts. The following day, MeetMe was uninstalled and deleted as well. The browser's search history had also been deleted on the morning of February 27th before the phone was turned in to authorities. Kline reportedly also searched on his computer for updates on the murder investigation and for, quote, how long does DNA last? And there is reference in his interview to him failing a polygraph examination conducted on Kline by Sergeant Matthew Collins, in which one of the questions was, do you know who committed these murders? And that brings up Kegan Kline's father. In the interview with Kline, police interrogators told Kline that they suspect other people also have access to his Anthony Schatz account. He admitted giving the password to the account to, quote, a lot of people. Klein told HLN interviewer Barbara McDonald that one of those people was his father, whom he lived with. He said he believed investigators were trying to pin the Delphi murders on his father. In that same interview, conducted via a jailhouse phone, Klein said police told him that the Anthony Schatz account, quote, was the last person to talk to her, meaning Libby. It's worth noting that Klein maintains he really doesn't recall talking to Libby via the Schatz account at all, and says he gave hair and DNA samples at the request of Delphi investigators. The Indiana State Police will not confirm any of this information, other than that Klein is awaiting trial in Miami County on charges unrelated to Delphi. But in August of 2022, custody of Klein was temporarily transferred from Miami County authorities to the Indiana State Police. This may have been in connection with a search that was being conducted of the Wabash River near Peru, Indiana. This area is approximately 40 miles from Delphi, but just about 2 miles from the home of Kegan Klein and his father. The Indiana State Police will not discuss the search other than to confirm that they have a dive team on site. But WDRB reports that, quote, investigators have spent weeks using metal detectors and scuba gear to search the area about 2 miles from the home where Kegan Klein of Peru, Indiana, was living with his father on February 26, 2017. The Murder Sheet podcast says that an anonymous source confirmed that the search is related to the Delphi murder investigation. Klein remains jailed with a $265,000 bond in the child pornography case. His trial, delayed by the temporary change in custody, is scheduled for January of 2023. As we approach the 6th anniversary in the Delphi murders next February, we're learning more and more about the avenues of investigation police have explored. Perhaps closure is not too far off. As a reminder, there is still a $250,000 reward in this case. If you have any information about the murders of Abby Williams and Liberty German, please contact the Indiana State Police.
Hey, listeners, you are back here with Mike Morford and Gray Hughes, producers of Scene of the Crime, and we are here to discuss some of the recent developments in the Delphi case. How you doing, Gray?
Not too bad. It's good to talk to you again. I guess I can't see your face right now. But
Yeah, it's you're not missing anything. but seriously, it's been a while since we put that those Delphi episodes out. It was, what year did we put that out? It seems like it was forever with COVID time now.
I think it was like late 2019.
Yeah,
early 2020.
Time has flown by, and we had COVID, and it sort of made things feel a little bit weird. I was hoping when we put that season out that the case would be solved, but here we are, years later, and it still hasn't been, which is frustrating. I know you've done a lot of work and covered this case extensively. Done a lot of audio stuff, video stuff, and analysis. So anytime I can talk to you about this, I'm definitely excited to, and I think listeners will appreciate what we have to say too.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
The thing is everybody has their own opinions out there, and I have a strong opinions on various things, and some people like it and some people don't.
Yeah. Well, I think we haven't put out any Delphi update episodes sooner because so much of the stuff out there was just really rumors and innuendos. And you see people that are just in these groups endlessly putting side-by-side photos up of people. And it's just a lot of stuff that's not solid that we really didn't feel confident about putting any updates out up until this point. But now, with some of the stuff that's come out lately, there's a lot of good information about this Klein guy, and of course Ron Logan too. Ron Logan was on the radar. I think a lot of people knew his name pretty early on. I guess let's start off talking a little bit about Ron Logan and about what was in those documents that came out about him.
Yeah, there was the Murder Sheet. That's another podcast. They actually have uncovered a whole bunch of different documents, and they've made them available to the public to look at, with some things redacted. The document was put out by basically, what do you call it? was it a prosecutor to sell a case to a judge. So they put in things there about Ron Logan creating an alibi for the time frame of when the girls were killed, and it turns out that one of the parts in there when he told his story, it was he placed himself there at 3 o'clock, which is right around the time he said he left at 3. So that's not really a great alibi since the girls were dropped off at 1:37 and they were killed sometime between 3 and 3:30.
Yeah, so he's there right around that time. We know he owns the property right near it.
Mm-hmm.
So he was on the the radar early. A lot of people knew his name early and had some suspicion of him, especially here we find out that he's creating this alibi for himself, asking his cousin to say, hey, say you took me to this place at 2:30. Anytime somebody's creating an alibi for themselves for some reason other than, what's the reason? It usually isn't a good thing. It's something shady that they're trying to cover up. And I think that's raising a lot of eyebrows that he was trying to do that.
Right. Well, a lot of people early on thought it was Ron Logan just because he wears some jeans and, he owns the property. I've never personally thought the person on the bridge looked anything like Ron Logan whatsoever. I mean, totally different body shape, sizes, everything. But it is his property, and law enforcement probably wanted to search his property, so they were able to come up with a way to do it by doing a warrant and putting out a case that a judge would look at and go, oh, okay. And then really, sign it off. And so they could go in and look for the particular items. Like there were some trophies apparently taken from the scene. I think undergarment and maybe a shoe, something like that.
Yeah. And I think part of the troubling thing, at least something that jumps out to me, is not only is he asking for this alibi to be created by his cousin, but he's asking for it before the bodies have been found, before they even know that I don't even think the public knew they were missing at that point.
Well, yeah, he did though, and there was people searching. And here's the thing: Ron Logan can't. He's not allowed to drive. Okay,
mm-hmm.
So he's not allowed to drive, and he knew that they'd be over. I guess apparently he left to go somewhere to
aquarium,
aquarium, and so forth. And he just didn't. It's possible that he came up with the alibi to avoid getting in trouble for that.
That does make sense. Because, and again, switching any part of your story to make this fake alibi, it could be for something minor, like he just doesn't want to get in trouble for what he's already in trouble for. It doesn't automatically mean that he was responsible. But you bring up a good point. If he already knew by that time that the girls were missing, they hadn't been found dead yet because they weren't found dead till the next day. He is making up that alibi in advance for their bodies being found. So on one hand, it does certainly seem, shady that he's doing this, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he is doing it because he killed them. It could be for some other reason and doesn't want to get in trouble for this other crime that he's already done and
right
face further consequences.
And the phone, and the thing is, the phone pings. The way they word it is the ping is consistent with Ron Logan's property. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a cell tower just north of Ron Logan's property. He lives there. So if he's home, his phone's going to be pinging in an area, and they say consistent with the crime scene. Okay, now I don't know if they have it where they can more specifically direct it down there based off of one tower. There's this one tower north of him, and then there's some a distance away. So I don't know if they were able to triangulate. That's why they say consistent with, because any ping of his phone is near his property, and I believe it's something like 1,400 feet from the crime scene.
Yeah. So without getting a specialist here to talk with us about the triangulation of cell phone. I don't know how many towers are in that area. Is it one tower? Is it more than one tower? How are they getting this down that close? It may not even be that suspicious. If there's only one tower and it shows him in the area, then that's not really a big deal because he lives in that area. Now, if it somehow gets him down to that creek, if they can get it down there, well, all of a sudden that's, seems a lot more damning.
Yeah, and another thing to look at is they took all of his electronic devices, computers, cell phones, everything, searched that entire property, including his vehicle with a fine-tooth comb, and they found absolutely nothing.
Yeah. And another thing that jumps out is you mentioned they found nothing. We know the girls were killed sometime between 3 and 3:30, and his the time he actually went to that store, he could have left as late as 4:45 to get that receipt. I think it was at 15 or something like that. So could he have committed the crime, got all the way back to his house, cleaned up, changed his clothes, and then immediately left to get to that store by 5:15 to get that receipt? I personally think I have a hard time thinking he could do that. So to me, it's a little bit shaky that he could, commit this horrible crime, get home, get cleaned up, get his clothes changed, and arrive at that store in that amount of time. I just have a hard time buying that.
Especially since in the document it mentions that there was a large amount of blood at the crime scene, and it surely would have got on the individual. So, Ron Logan, I doubt he's like this really, super evil genius who's able to get rid of every single conceivable speck of blood from the victims off of his property or his vehicle or somewhere. You know what I mean? Like there was nothing. There was no trail of blood. There is absolutely nothing that
physical evidence linking him there.
Right. All it was this, him setting up an alibi and them wanting to search his property. It gave them a perfect opportunity to sort of weave a story that would lead back to Ron Logan.
Yeah. And there's, we mentioned too, some of the details that have come out was that there's some kind of degree of staging of the body. So to me, I don't think this person just killed them and ran away. I think he spent some time there doing this, which makes Ron Logan's window even smaller that he could be the killer.
Yeah. Well, it's 1:37. And here's the thing: we know now that I think the image was taken at 2:13 of the killer. Right. So the girls got dropped off at 1:37. The killer on the bridge, that was taken at 2:13, and there's a photograph of Abby at 2:07 on the bridge. So it took them 6 minutes to get across the bridge all the way to the other side, basically. I mean, it could have been earlier and they just waited, but they saw this guy coming towards them, right? And they say the video is 43 seconds long, and the part where it says guys down the hill is near the end. So when the camera started rolling, he was quite a bit further back. I actually made a video the other day where I went backwards in time and with somebody that actually walked across the bridge, and yeah, he's another 70, 80 feet back walking when the video probably started rolling, and then he just catches up to him right at the end of the bridge there.
Yeah. The timing obviously is a big concern, in how much time it took to commit the crime, how much time the person left, stayed in the area with their bodies. Because what time did Libby's dad come?
He got there at 3:15, about 3:14 is when his phone record, when he pulled in, when he called the last time, and it went straight to voicemail.
And then he went out there looking for them. So could the killer have been out there laying low while he's out walking around? It's definitely possible. But then again, that creates an issue as, how does Ron Logan slip out of there while, Libby's dad is walking around the area? It makes it even harder for Ron Logan to escape, get back to his house, clean up, and then leave on time. So I have a hard time believing that Ron Logan has anything to do with this. But
Yeah, well, let me throw this in there. See, here's another thing I actually was just thinking about was the witnesses that see the killer, the one that either the first sketch was made from, that's the younger person. The first sketch made was the young person, but it wasn't released for 2 years. That's walking the other way down the trail. So why would Ron Logan be walking down the trail the opposite direction from his home? Does that make any sense?
no. And also, people have tried to say that the bridge guy looks like this or he looks like that. They've tried to enhance the pictures. Basically, it looks like a blob. It's hard to really tell anything.
Yeah.
The sketch they released of the young person, that's obviously not Ron Logan. So if that person's in any way connected to the crime, if they're the killer, then that's certainly not Ron Logan. It doesn't look anything like him. The age is way off. So I think it's just further evidence that Ron Logan didn't have anything to do with this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole community of people that just absolutely believe it's him based off of this document.
Yeah.
And I just don't, where's the evidence other than there's this document, but there's no physical evidence at all tying Ron Logan to the killings. However, there are, Tony and Kagan Klein, mainly Kagan Klein, but Tony Klein's been mentioned in various, by sources out there that are actually in connection with, again, the murder sheet. They have sources out there and they've mentioned that. So, it's interesting, but it's mainly, the Kagan Klein documents tell a whole different story and point to a possible catfishing motive here.
Yeah, well, let's segue into the Klein stuff. So, you and I talked about this case several times off the air, and when we were planning that season and some of our theories. And I said early on, I find it hard to believe that there's some random monster killer out there in the woods waiting for them, like Jason Voorhees or something like that. I said to myself, I just find that hard to believe. I think somehow, some way, someone knew that these girls were going to be out there. And having, kids of my own, I know how big social media is. I always felt there was some way via social media that these girls had posted that they were going to be out there or had communicated with someone that they were going to be out there. I didn't think it was a coincidence. I always felt that there was some connection there. And, I know we talked about that, and we had on Ives, who sort of dismissed that theory, as I recall it. But now, based on what we know about Klein, it seems like it's a possibility that the catfishing was a situation.
Well, I can actually verify what Morph just said. I remember talking to him many times, even after Ives. He said, "I don't know, man. It just feels." So you had good instincts there. Ives did say that, and law enforcement told the family that for years, and that's just what they said. And then it turns out, obviously, they did the search warrant at the Klein residence on February 25th, 2017. That is less than 2 weeks after the murders. They were already there doing a search warrant because they realized that a catfishing account had contacted, or at least liked, one of Libby's comments and was communicating with one of her friends. So they looked at it, and apparently it just didn't lead anywhere at that time, and the investigation sort of just branched off into different directions. And then during the reset, I believe probably around 2019, this is just me speculating here, somewhere prior to the Doug Carter press conference where he released the animation of the person walking. Well, it's not really an animation, it's actually a video of him walking. And I think it was guys, that part of the guys down the hill was released first. And then they released the new sketch. So during that process, after that, I think revisiting the original investigation, they went back to that, and it just turned into an absolute treasure trove, including the Dropbox that Kagan Klein was using led to one of the largest child pornography rings in Indiana state history.
Yeah, so this guy Klein, we know, is certainly a creep, and it's not beyond the realm to think that he could be, you know, sharing this information, sharing contact with the girls. I don't know if Abby was connected, but Libby certainly, from the reports, had some kind of contact with this guy. So who else could this guy have shared that information with? And could one of those people gone out there to meet them, saying, "Hey, I'm a 16-year-old boy, and I'll meet you out there. What time are you going to be there?" You know, it's sad to say, but there's a lot of that goes on. Some of these predators, try and present themselves as a fellow teenager, and in reality, they're not. So, and if one of these people is a killer that's dangerous, then this could be the result of that.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, when I picture how it may have gone down, I mean, it turns out that there's a 194-page document out there, an interview with Kagan Klein, and he mentions that the law enforcement tells him that they know that he communicated with Libby at 8 o'clock in the morning on the day that they were murdered. So, I mean, that is absolutely insane. So what if she was out there thinking, oh, I'm going to meet Anthony Schatz, this really cute guy, and she's just, kind of excited. Apparently, it also turns out that Libby had really long conversations with Anthony Schatz, sharing photos back and forth, and she was really like smitten with him. Okay, so she shows up with her buddy Abby, and maybe there's this guy sitting over there, but it's not Anthony Schatz, so they sort of linger around. So there's this weird time gap of 1:37 they get dropped off, and then 2:07 there's this photograph on the bridge, which is only about a third of the way across. So there's a good 20 minutes of missing time. So you sort of picture maybe they were lingering around waiting for the cute Anthony Schatz guy to show up, but he didn't. So then they had to kill time waiting an hour and a half to 2 hours for Derek to get back to pick them up at around 3:15. So they just get on the bridge and, they start walking down the trail, and they get on the bridge, take photos. They're sort of whimsically taking photographs, one of the whole bridge, one of Abby. And then at some point they look back probably, and here's this guy that had maybe been, sitting around when they got there. This is just how I picture this. And then they head off to the other end of the bridge because they don't want to pass him. And they go to the other end of the bridge, and they stand there waiting, hoping that he turns around, but he just keeps on coming. And the fear that was building up inside of them. And this guy comes by, says, guys, down the hill. Apparently there's a click sound. I verified this. And law enforcement believes that is a gun that he pulls out, and then he orders him down the hill. And it really hits me when I think that they were so scared, and the fear never went away. It actually got worse and worse and worse, and it led to an absolute nightmare. So
yeah, and obviously the police have chosen not to discuss what happened. They've mentioned their staging of the bodies. They've chosen not to release the cause of death, but it was definitely not a good. It was a real horrible crime scene. So this person is obviously a child killer, but we're talking about someone very, very disturbed if they're doing staging of the bodies, and there's other things that happen there. This is someone that's dangerous, that if they did it once here, they could do it again, it seems like.
Yeah, definitely seems like that, especially with staging. And then Ives mentions maybe 3 not trophies, but signatures that were at the crime scene that he thought were really unusual and odd.
Yeah.
So,
and the key seems to be here at least in this latest development, seems to be centered around Klein, because they let him out of the the one agency, let him go over into
Indiana State Police took it over from I think it was the Peru, I can't remember exactly that agency, but Indiana State Police got custody of him, And then obviously they took him out of their custody to bring him somewhere. And then almost immediately after they had taken him out, they start searching the Wabash River, only about 2 miles from the home.
Yeah.
Of where Tony Klein's house is, and that's where Kagan lived at the time.
And this search of that river was pretty extensive. It went on for several days, right?
I don't know if it's stopped yet. It was still, they were still searching there a couple days ago.
Wow. So I mean, and again, we can assume that this is connected to the case and we can only guess what they're looking for. Are they looking for a murder weapon? Are they looking for a cell phone? Who knows what they're looking for? But it seems pretty clear that if they're spending that much time there, that they're looking for something probably connected to this case.
Well, here's the thing: is they're looking for something that is metal and heavy enough to sink to the bottom and not be moved too far away downstream after 5 years. They're using metal detectors in the water, and they are putting stakes around, and they even got a crash unit out there to measure things. So I almost wonder if they found something and they're just measuring everything to put together the whole crime scene, or they're trying to figure out the trajectory of somebody. Let's say that, well, it seems like it was maybe thrown off of a footbridge, though. So that would be kind of a weird thing to start trying to measure trajectory on, because you could just throw it out. But I don't know. There was a crash unit out there, and they were measuring and figuring out, the whole layout of the land. So
it's a good clue, because if it's, if we're talking something like a gun, a knife, a cell phone, something like that, you could toss them a pretty good distance from the land or from the bridge. But if it was something heavy with some real weight to it, you could only throw that a short distance.
right.
So depending on how far out they're looking could be a clue to what they're looking for. But it's clear. It's clear from everything that you just mentioned that they're looking for something very important. They're spending that much time and they've got that much manpower out there that this seems like a big clue they're looking for.
So to reset this part, there's maybe some people that don't even know who Kagan Klein is. So Kagan Klein created a online profile named Anthony Schatz, who he used to lure girls and get photographs and images and videos, and he would share those with people online and other people. And when he created the account, it led back to his home, which was actually Tony Klein's residence, and it led back to the home, and the account was created there. So law enforcement came in on the 25th, put a search warrant there, and Kagan gave them all kinds of electronic devices, and all of them had, child pornography on them, absolutely, horrendous things. And he gave it all to them. However, he did not give them the phone that he was using during the time Abby and Libby were murdered. Okay, so he goes to the police station, they give him a polygraph test, and then he comes home, and then through forensic analysis, because he does get the phone when he gets home. He didn't find it, he put it somewhere. He didn't want to give it to law enforcement. He was questioned on his polygraph test about the Abby and Libby case. He comes home and he starts uninstalling, installing the same apps over and over and over again to completely wipe out any traces of any communications that were being had prior to that. Then after a couple days, he calls law enforcement, gives them the phone, and through their analysis, they were able to tell that he had done that. So you ask yourself, why was that the only phone that he was really concerned about? What do you think?
Well, I think.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know what to think. I'm pretty mixed up with all the different horrible things this guy's into. To me, it seems clear that this guy may hold some kind of piece of the puzzle. Whether it's him that killed them, I don't know, but he may know the person that did. He may have put them in touch with the person that did. You mentioned he communicated with Libby the morning she was killed. That's big. Then I read something else. There was another detail that he supposedly, after the murders, he sent someone a message and said, "What happened? OMG."
Well,
And
no, well, actually, what it was one of, yeah, it's something like that. But if somebody told him, "Hey, did you hear what happened to Libby?" And he goes, "Oh my God, what?" And that's kind of a weird response because that sort of almost implies prior knowledge. Oh my God, what? Did you hear what happened to Libby? And then you get so excited. Oh my God, what?
yeah,
Something like that.
almost
And also,
like
yeah.
he's building it up like it's something big, but he's trying to act like surprised too.
Yeah, let me tell you this part. So also, Kagan Klein created an account, an Emily Ann account, and it was a female profile that would befriend girls to make them feel comfortable, and even they would share images with her. But one of the main purposes, it seems, of the Emily Ann account was to sort of groom the girls into being okay meeting somebody in their 40s, late 40s, that type of thing, like a dad of somebody. And see, that's interesting, right? Why would that happen from Kagan Klein's phone? Why would he ever do that? So there was another person that had access to the phone, and Kagan's even said his dad had access to him, is his father, Tony.
And his father is what, in his 40s or 50s, something like that?
Yeah, I think he's late 40s.
Yeah.
I don't know his exact age right now off the top of my head, but
Hmm.
it's interesting too. And then one of the things that's pretty disturbing is during the searches on the phone, there's searches about, child pornography, types of words that you would type in. And right in between all that was bodies of Sandy Hook. And then you wonder, that's kind of whoever would look that up, really.
Yeah,
It's
it's kind of yeah, in the middle of all the other weird stuff he's looking for.
So here's the thing: is like there's issues. Tony Klein bashed one of his kids' head into a toilet, a stepkid, and during the time he bashed the kid's head into the toilet, he bit his wife in the stomach. And that was part of it. So that's sort of this weird sexual sort of, like, he's excited during that time, and then his other stepdaughter, he would chase around and say, "Hey, go ahead and run," and then he would chase her. And one time she broke, I don't know if it was her arm or legs or something like that after jumping. And it's just really disturbing stuff. Those are all documented events that I just told you.
Yeah, and we know that Kagan Klein has provided DNA. Do you know if his father has?
Well, I'm sure they could just use his, right, and then sort of do.
Yeah, but obviously you could, having the actual original person as opposed to using a family members would give them a more direct route. But sure, they could say, okay, this person's related to this other person. Again, jumping ahead of ourselves, assuming that there's any kind of DNA connection between the Kleins and any DNA evidence they have at Abby and Libby's crime scene, which hopefully they do have some. That's something that's sort of been kept very quiet about what they have, what they don't have, but hopefully there is some, because if there's not anything physical evidence that connects to someone, or they don't find a murder weapon with fingerprints on it, that kind of stuff, I mean, what are we left with? We're not left with a lot of good outcomes for this case.
Yeah, so basically you have Kagan Klein, who was actually communicating with Libby during a sleepover the same weekend. Then I think it was like Friday and Saturday, and then on Monday is when at 8 a.m, Kagan Klein's phone communicates with Libby's phone, and then they go missing, and then they're found murdered out there. Then Kagan Klein, when he was interviewed in 2020, went out of his way never to mention his father or anything like that. Kagan Klein, I think, knows exactly what happened here, but he went out of his way to not mention his father. Then when Barbara McDonald from HLN interviewed Kagan, he brought up his father way more times than that. And law enforcement, you can tell based on some of the articles that are out there and documents, that they've been working on a deal with Kagan. The only deal he has is the Delphi case. There isn't a deal regarding his own case So if he wants to lower his own case's penalties, he's going to make a deal on the Delphi case. So then delay after delay, and then ISP gets custody of him, takes him somewhere, and then almost immediately after that, they start searching the Wabash River using metal detectors, and at least, dozens of law enforcement personnel out there. And you're hoping that they find that holy grail, the smoking gun, as it were, that leads to an arrest in the case.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for, because I don't want to, be here coming back for a 5-year anniversary from now. We were already at 5 years. I was hoping it would never take this long, but if we're here in 5 years still talking about this case and no arrest, that's going to be really, really tragic. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned. And of course, we will come back with an update episode if there's any major announcements, any arrest. We'll be back here to cover that.
And everybody, keep your fingers crossed here. It feels like they're on the right path finally. Doesn't it feel like that way to you?
It does. It feels like there's something here big going on, and we'll just have to be patient, and hopefully they find what they're looking for.
I couldn't agree more.
In the meantime, I hope everyone enjoyed this update episode, and who knows, maybe we will be back soon with a new season of Scene of the Crime. Hopefully Gray's up for that down the line. Yeah,
that'd be absolutely awesome.
Scene of the Crime is a production of AbJack Entertainment and co-produced by Jessica Betancourt, Gray Hughes, and Mike Morford. It's written by Jessica Betancourt. If you'd like to help Scene of the Crime reach new listeners, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please recommend this podcast to your friends. You can find Scene of the Crime on Twitter at Scene of Crime Pod and on Facebook.